The people of any country are protect the government. Anytime the government feels threatened or it feels its interests are threatened, and of course that doesn't have to mean domestic interests, right? U.S. government being a great example, right? It has interests all over the world, so this can happen anywhere. But anytime it believes it or its interests are threatened, what does it do? It's on an ongoing basis. It's conscripting our money to protect it and what it sees as its interests. And sometimes it actually conscripts our bodies, our persons. Luckily, that's not happening right now, but that has happened before and could happen again, and governments historically have done that. So, in fact, I think this is a better way to look at things, that the government does not protect us, we protect it and its interests. And, of course, that changes a lot of things. Put that way, we don't owe it any gratitude, do we? The other thing is, of course, which this group doesn't need to be reminded of, but not only does it not protect us in this kind of the narrow sense I just talked about it doesn't protect us because it's too busy endangering us. It's too busy meddling around the world creating dangers to us. Well, how does that fit with the story that the government protects us? You know, this all goes back to Hobbes and the Hobbesian deal we theoretically made many moons ago, where we said to Leviathan, yes, life in the state of nature is so terrible, so horrible. We'll give you all power, all the guns, essentially all the guns. I mean, the few handguns we own would be nothing against the state. So effectively, we give you all the guns. Just protect us from each other in the state of nature. And the great political philosopher Anthony de Jassé has now been spending his intellectual life showing that, of course, that deal was never literally made, but it was really a fool's deal. Think about what we did. We gave all the power to the Leviathan, and the fact that we go to vote, every 4 years, every 2 years, doesn't really change the story very much. We've given all the power to Leviathan, and for a promise of protection, and we didn't bother to ask back then, well, who's going to protect us from it? And why is that a good deal? Maybe it's better to take our chances in the state of nature, and maybe Hobbes had the state of nature wrong anyway, right? Locke had a rather better picture of the state of nature. He had inconveniences, not a war of all against all. Maybe that would have been preferable to the deal we cut. And so this business about it protecting us is something that I think needs some serious rethinking. One of the things that the war boosters, and I have in mind now the radio and TV talk show people on the right, people like Limbaugh, with the person that Keith Olbermann calls the comedian Rush Limbaugh, and Hannity and Laura Ingraham and all these people. One of the things that they help perpetuate is this idea that America has always been in love with the military. And of course, they exude this all the time, right? That nobody deserves more respect than the military and people in the military. And even war critics like Keith Olbermann have to always preface their remarks by talking about the great service to the country that the people, say, in Iraq are performing. Now, I don't understand how you can condemn that war, and Olbermann does this, a little over melodramatically in my view, but he does. And he's very critical of the Bush administration and the deception and the lies. At the same time, he can hold this idea that the people over there are serving the country. Now, I don't know. I wrote an article about this recently. I'm not even sure what people mean by the country. Okay, that's too much of a package deal for my comfort. There's too much thrown into that grab bag. And a big part of the grab bag is taken up by the government, right? When they say the country, they're thinking the government. What they don't really want us to know is that there is a huge anti-militarist tradition in the United States that was carried over from England. And one of the great books to read on this subject, it's out of print, but of course in these days of the internet you can find it, is Arthur E. Kirch's The Civilian and the Military, which came out, I believe, in the 1956. E. Kirch was a great historian. He's passed away some years ago, taught at SUNY, Syracuse, and then I think at George Washington University. Great old guy. He wrote another great book. His best-known book, actually, is called The Decline of American Liberalism, and he's using liberalism in the title there in the Jeffersonian sense. It's a great overview, survey of American history, and the decline of libertarianism, essentially. Excellent book, and I recommend it to everybody. And then in this other book, The Civilian and the Military, he focuses on military issues and the relationship between the civilian sector and the military. And which people, very often the people refer to the president as the commander-in-chief of the country, which he's not, of course. He's, if anything, he's commander-in-chief of the armed forces. But that distinction, especially from, like I say, the right-wing talking heads, like us, maybe they don't even fully understand. I don't know. Maybe I'm giving it too much credit, but they overlook that distinction, and they help convey this message that he's our commander-in-chief. Well, the hell he is. He's not. He's not our commander-in-chief. The most the Constitution gives him is commander-in-chief of the armed forces, but even there, Congress has a lot of powers over the armed forces, despite what John Yoo and all the proponents of the unitary executive theory would have you believe. They make it sound like nobody has any say in this area, foreign policy or military, but the president. These are inherent vested powers, and that basically nobody can touch him, and this is total nonsense. I mean, I'm no big fan of the Constitution. As if you remember from last year, I'm a defender of the Articles of Confederation with my fellow Articlesian Karen Kwiatkowski. Last year she spoke before me, so she got her plug in before I could on the Articles. So I'm no huge fan of the Constitution, but it's still pretty clear that Congress has a lot to say about foreign policy and the military. It just hasn't asserted itself because they're cowards. They don't want the responsibility. And there was never any need for the War Powers Act if they had just stepped up and claimed the powers that are in the Constitution. And getting back to my main point, there's an American anti-militarist tradition that people are ignorant about, and those who maybe have some glimmer of it would never want to acknowledge because it goes against their agenda, where the military is on a very high pedestal. Remember when General Petraeus was going to make not the last appearance in Congress, but the one before. That was much awaited. Remember, there was going to be a big report on the surge, and word had gotten out that actually Petraeus' report, he was not going to write his own report. It was going to get filtered through the White House, and the White House said, no, Petraeus is writing it. And then he was going to testify before the House and the Senate, and there was all this anticipation. The cable shows were doing wall-to-wall coverage, long before he came to Washington to do the testimony. Everybody's talking, what's he going to say? How's he going to be questioned? And the one thing you couldn't really say was, well, maybe we should be skeptical about what he's going to say. In other words, you could not imply that a general would come before the Congress and spin that this was, you can't say this. I mean, Hannity went bonkers at the suggestion that a general, a great man, a great American, they love this phrase, a great American, would come before the Congress of the United States and not just give the unvarnished truth. To suggest that he might put some spin on it was heresy. It was sinful to even think this. So it was a forbidden thought. Then, of course, it came out that Petraeus had told people, not in the very distant past, that he wanted to run for president one day. So that kind of took some of the glamour out of it. He was politically ambitious. He may still be. I think his name's at least been mentioned by somebody as vice president, maybe not high up, but I'm sure McCain would have him. But let's remember what Clausewitz, the great Clausewitz, said in his book on war. Basically, he said that war is politics by other means, which means generals are politicians in uniforms. And any general is a politician, especially the highest-ranking generals are politicians. I mean, gosh, look at who's the guy that Clinton made head of NATO, ran for president. Can't think of his name, from Arkansas.